G'day you mob, welcome to this episode. So last week I did an episode counting from 1 to 100. This had been recommended by quite a few of you wanting to do this as a pronunciation exercise. So I'll leave a card up the top here. Go check that out after this video. In this video, I want to compare the teen numbers, right? 13, 14, 15, and the T numbers, 20, 30, 40. Okay, so we're going to compare the pronunciation. We'll go through me just pronouncing one of these after the other, and then we'll pronounce them back to back as sort of minimal pairs so that you can hear one compared to the other. And then at the end, I'm going to have a quiz. So make sure you stay to the end and see if you can pass this listening comprehension quiz to test if you have learnt well, young Jedi. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so part one. This is where I'm going to count from 13 to 19. Obviously, you can enunciate really clearly to make these words more obvious, but native speakers and really advanced English speakers typically don't do this. So instead of saying 13, they're going to say 13, which is why you guys have trouble with 13 versus 30. Now, the interesting thing is for that these words ending in teen from 13 to 19, 13 to 19, is that there are two different versions of the pronunciation where you can either emphasize the first syllable, 13, or the second syllable, 13. So I'm not even really sure which one of these I do, so it probably doesn't matter ultimately, but just try and mimic what I'm doing when I'm saying these words, okay? Let's go. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. In fact, I think I was emphasizing the first syllable. That's where the emphasis was. 13, 14. Yeah, it would have been the first syllable. So let's just go back there and have a look at 13 to 19. And you'll notice too, if I show the IPA for each of these, you can emphasize either the first syllable or the second syllable in English. So we'll go through each of these from 13 to 19 one by one, and let's pay attention to the pronunciation changes here. So you could say 13, 13, but I would say 13, 13. In an Australian accent, that R isn't going to be pronounced, and the T is going to become a T flap. 13. And I would emphasize the first syllable in this word. I wouldn't emphasize the second one, I don't think. It can be either in English, but typically I think I'm going to emphasize the first one. 13. 13. Let's keep going. 14. 14. Same thing here. R isn't pronounced. The T turns into a T flap. 14. 14. 15. 15. Now, the interesting thing that happens here, you can articulate well. You could say 15 with a T sound, a hard T sound, the true T, but mine almost turns into a D sound. 15. 15. 15. 15. Let's keep going. 16. Same thing for 16. I would say a sort of D sound instead of a hard T sound. 16. I could do that, but it's a bit over the top. I would say 16, 16, 16, 17. Now this one differs again. So we've had the T flap, and then we've had the T that becomes a sort of D sound. And now the T's disappeared, right? Because the N is before the T gets muted, and it's just 17, 17, 17. Then we have 18. 18. Now the T's gone back to a T flap. There's a vowel either side of the T, T flap. 18. So the tongue hits the top of the roof of the mouth briefly. 18. 18. And then lastly, 19. 19. Same thing as 17. 19 has an N before the T is muted, and you get neen, 19. 19. So let's just count through these all one more time. 13. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Good work. Time for part two. Okay, so now we're going to go through the 10s, right? The 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. In this case, unlike the previous examples where you could potentially, as an English speaker, emphasize either half of the word, the first syllable or the second syllable. In this example, you have to emphasize the first one. And the E sound at the ends of these words is going to be a short E sound. It's not going to be the usual long E, which you're going to hear in 19, right? It's going to be a longer one. There's an N after it. In this case, it's just a short E sound. So let's go through each of these one by one. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. The interesting thing you're going to notice here is that it follows the same rules for the T as the teens did, okay? So for 20, although that we don't have a teen for that, right? We've got 12. 20 has that NT, so the T is muted and you hear 20, 20, 20. 30, 30, the R isn't pronounced. The T becomes a T flap with vowels either side of it. 30, 30. Same thing for the word 40. 40. In the Australian accent, the R isn't pronounced if there's a consonant after it. 40. Two vowel sounds either side of the T, so T flap. 40. 40. 50. Now that T in 50, like with 15, has become a D sound. 50. 50. Same thing for 60. 60. Now we move on to 70. What happened to the T? 70. It gets muted, it disappears. We just go straight from the N to the E sound. 70. 70. 80. 80. Now we have a vowel either side of the T, so the T becomes a T flap again. 80. 90. 90. So here again, N before the T, mute the T, 90. 90. So let's take a break before we get into part 3 and discuss the endings of these words. So for 13 to 19, the ending is teen or een on the end of it, right? The long E sound and then an N. If you really want to be heard, you need to make sure that you're making that E sound a little longer than in the comparison with, say, 30, 40, 50, and you need that N sound at the end. 13, 13, 14. That's what the native speaker or the advanced English speaker is listening out for when they hear 13 or 30. They're listening for vowel length of that E sound, and they're listening for the N at the end of een, or if it's missing and it's just a E. So hopefully that makes sense. Now let's go through and compare each of these sort of word pairs. 13, 30, 14, 40. Okay, so listen and repeat after me. 13, 30, 14, 40, 15, 50, 16, 60, 17, 70, 18, 80, 19, 90. Great job, guys. Now it's time for part 4, where I'm going to say one of these word pairs. So in the example of 13 versus 30, it's going to be one of these words. It won't be both, okay? So see if you can listen and hear which one I'm saying. Try and write down the number. And to get the answers, be sure to download the worksheet for today's episode in the description below. Okay, let's go. 30. 14, 15, 60, 17, 80, 90. Great job, guys. Remember, you can go and check out the previous video up here where I count from 1 to 100 and work on your pronunciation skills there, and I will see you next time. Bye.